Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. When the Alliance learned human breathing releases compounds lethal to all known species, the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Take the Galactic Alliance, for instance, 17 species spread across 23 star systems, each one convinced they'd seen it all. Unified defense treaties, interstellar commerce regulations, even standardized bathroom designs for mixed-species space stations. They'd spent centuries patting themselves on whatever passed for backs among their varied anatomies, certain they had the whole advanced civilization thing figured out. Then humans happened. The Alliance observation post orbiting Jupiter had been monitoring Earth's development for decades. Standard protocol: watch the primitives, document their progress, determine if they're worth talking to. Earth had been classified as marginally interesting, a rather generous assessment from beings who considered the development of faster-than-light travel to be the bare minimum for civilized conversation. Another day, another data packet of humans doing human things. Psi Chief Observer Kel Keat, a gelatinous mass of neural tissue suspended in a hovering containment field. The observer absently extended a pseudopod to adjust the hollow display, scrolling through footage of Earth's latest achievements. Look at them, still burning hydrocarbons. Adorable. First Contact Officer Drobe, a cheetah insectoid whose species had evolved from something resembling Earth's praying mantis. If praying mantises were 7 feet tall and had developed advanced mathematics before learning to walk, clicked his mandibles. In what passed for amusement, the report says they're preparing for their first manned mission to Mars. Should we tell them we've already got 3 mining operations on the far side and violate Protocol 7b2? The Admiral would have our clearance levels revoked faster than you can say. Bureaucratic nightmare. Cat's containment field shimmered with annoyance. Besides, watching them figure it out is half the fun. What neither of them realized was that the most significant discovery about humans was literally right under their olfactory organs. The breakthrough came when a junior xenobiologist named Vex was assigned the mind-numbing task of analyzing atmospheric samples from human habitats. Vex, whose species resembled a cross between a dolphin and a palm tree, evolution is where like that, had been stuck with the job as punishment for what was diplomatically referred to as the incident at last year's Alliance Scientific Conference. Carbon dioxide levels, unremarkable nitrogen content standard for Class M planets, trace elements, weight. Vex's eye stalks quivered with sudden interest. Computer, run analysis again on sample 347b. The computer chirped obediently. Analysis complete. Sample contains 7.2 parts per million of compound C2H5O, 3.4 parts per million of Ch3. Oh, that can't be right. Thel's tentacles danced across the console. These are complex organic volatiles. Where's this sample from again? Sample 347 bits. Human exhalation collected from subject designated tourist with ice cream. Central Park, New York. Vexel stared at the readout. Botanical cetacean. Features frozen in disbelief. They exhaling acetylol. And is that ethanol? Computer cross-rection. These compounds with known biochemical effects on Alliance species. 1 minute and 17 seconds later, Vex was racing through the corridors of the observation post, knocking over 2 maintenance drones and 1 very surprised cafeteria worker. Admiral Zix was not accustomed to having her meditation cycle interrupted. As the highest-ranking official in this sector, her time was valuable, meticulously scheduled, and currently supposed to be dedicated to achieving harmony with the cosmic flow, or whatever passed for spirituality among her crystalline species. This had better be important. Xenobiologist. She hummed the vibrations of her crystalline form, expressing displeasure with perfect resonance. Humans exhale poison. Thrill gasped, tentacles still twitching from the sprint. The Admiral's crystalline structure clouded slightly. Elaborate. Their normal respiratory process releases compounds that are lethal to all 17 Alliance species. Not just harmful, lethal in sufficient concentration. Human breath could kill every non-human on an Alliance cruiser in under 14 minutes. Admiral Zix's structure went from cloudy to completely opaque, the equivalent of a jaw hitting the floor. You're certain I've run the analysis 12 times. Their lungs aren't just for gas exchange, they're chemical factories producing compounds our biology can't process even brief. Exposure causes cellular disruption in our tissues for several long moments. The only sound in the Admiral's chamber was the gentle hum of her crystalline form processing this information. Well, she finally resonated. This complicates first contact. Considerably, news travels fast in a civilization with quantum entanglement. Communication news about a newly discovered species that exhales death travels even faster within 24 hours. Emergency sessions of the Alliance Council had been convened. Representatives from all 17 member species gathered, each in their specialized environmental chambers, to discuss what many were already calling the human problem. The implications are staggering, declared High Counselor Grun, an entity composed primarily of sentient fungal colonies. His mycelia pulsed with agitation as he addressed the chamber. If we can't even breathe the same air as these humans without risking death, how can we possibly integrate them into the Alliance? Perhaps we shouldn't, suggested Representative Ver of the silicon-based Techic collective. Ver, crystalline form, glittered under the chamber lights as she continued. The most logical solution would be to quarantine the Sol system indefinitely. This statement set off a cacophony of voices, clicks, whistles, pheromone releases, and electromagnetic pulses, the varied communication methods of 17 distinct evolutionary paths, all expressing alarm simultaneously. Ordered, demanded Council Moderator Fleur, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate hovering me mechanism. We will address this crisis with the rationality and wisdom that defines the rationality and wisdom that supposedly defined the Alliance was notably absent from what followed. The emergency session devolved into what human observers might have called a complete and utter meltdown. If humans had been present, which they couldn't be unless everyone wanted to die from toxic fumes. Meanwhile, back at the Jupiter observation post, poor Thriel had become something of a pariah. No good deed goes unpunished, and discovering that a neighboring species is naturally toxic to your entire civilization definitely counts as a good deed with massive punishment potential. I was just doing my job, Threx complained to Cleet in the station's recreational area, carefully sipping the nutrient solution through a specialized proboscis. How was I supposed to know humans would turn out to be walking biological weapons? Cade, gelatinous form, rippled, sympathetic. You couldn't have, but you have to admit it's quite the career-defining discovery. Great, I'll be remembered as the one who found the Death Brothers. That'll look fantastic on my resume. News of the discovery had also leaked to the Alliance public as sensitive information. Inevitably does. The response was predictable: panic, wild speculation, and a sudden boom in personal protective equipment sales. Atmospheric isolation suits. Get your genuine atmospheric isolation suits here, called a Marin Trader in the central commerce hub of Proxima Station. Guaranteed protection against human respiratory toxins. Only 499 credits, a small price for continued existence. The fact that humans hadn't actually made contact with the Alliance yet didn't seem to dampen the entrepreneurial spirit or public fear. Sensationalist news outlets across 17 worlds ran headlines ranging from death by conversation, the human threat to our Earth's inhabitants evolving into biological terrors. One particularly ambitious publishing house on Rail 7 rushed out a speculative documentary titled When They Breathe: The Coming Human Apocalypse, complete with dramatic reenactments featuring actors in crude human costumes exhaling visible green vapor that caused simulated Alliance citizens to collapse dramatically. The Alliance military wasn't immune to the hysteria either. Admiral Zix found herself fielding calls from the High Command about potential defensive measures against respiratory warfare. No, General, I don't believe we need to develop an anti-breathing weapon, she explained with the patience of someone who's had to repeat the same sentence 17 times. Humans aren't weaponizing their exhalations, it's simply their biology. The General's response came through as a series of electromagnetic pulses that translated roughly to "That's exactly what they want us to think." As the panic spread, a small group of level-headed scientists at the Alliance Xenobiology Institute began working on the actual problem: how to safely interact with a species whose normal respiratory function was lethal to everyone else. The compound concentration is the key noted. Senior researcher Doc, a spindly arachnoid whose 8 limbs work tirelessly at different holographic interfaces in open spaces, with sufficient ventilation the toxicity levels drop below the danger threshold. It's only in enclosed environments that we face immediate risk, so we simply need to design filtration systems capable of neutralizing these compounds, suggested Doc's colleague, a photosynthetic entity named Claw, whose thought processes were literally powered by the light fixtures above their workstation. Easier theorized than accomplished DS clicked back. These compounds bind to receptocytes across multiple Alliance physiologies in different ways. What's safe for your photosynthetic processes might still be lethal to my respiratory system. As the scientists debated solutions, Admiral Zix made a decision that would change the course of interspecies relations forever. Against the explicit recommendations of the Alliance Council, she authorized a covert mission to Earth with a simple objective: learn more about these breathing humans before the Alliance did something monumentally stupid. Operation Deep Breath, named with the painful irony universal to military operations across the cosmos, launched with minimal fanfare and maximal secrecy. A small team equipped with cutting-edge environmental suits descended to Earth. Their mission, simple in theory: investigate these toxic breathing humans without dying horribly. Commander Vex led the team, an amphibious Mlax who resembled a 6-foot Axel Old in a pressure suit, a veteran of 17 first contacts. The 17th filed away in Alliance records as the unfortunate misunderstanding. Vex was the perfect blend of experienced and expendable. Listen up, Vex addressed the team as their stealth shuttle pierced Earth's atmosphere. Prime directive is simple: we observe, we record, we don't interact, and absolutely no souvenirs or selfies with the locals. That was one time, muttered Specialist Grex, the team's cultural anthropologist. The incident involving Grex and a group of confused tourists at the Galactic Heritage Site was still required viewing and what not to do training modules across the Alliance. At times, all it takes to start an interspecies panic. Vex replied, compound eyes narrowing inside the environmental suit. We're dealing with Death Brothers here. A single mistake could have diplomatic implications for the next 1,000 years, assuming we live long enough to have diplomatic anything. The 6-member team consisted of Vex, Grex medical officer Pix, a gelatinous entity whose specialized containment suit resembled a hovering crystal ball technician, Z, a silicon-based life form whose natural ability to process complex data streams made them the perfect atmospheric analyst. Security officer Drek, a bipedal reptiloid whose species evolved from apex predators and hadn't quite shaken the habit of hissing when stressed, and communication specialist Blip, a sentient cloud of charged particles who could intercept and decode almost any transmission. The team set up base in an abandoned warehouse outside Chicago, a location specifically selected for its proximity to human population centers and humans' apparent indifference to mysterious activities in abandoned buildings, perfect for aliens trying to remain undetected. Decontamination protocols will be followed every time we return to base, Vex instructed as they set up equipment: triple filtered air supply, quadruple backups, and constant suit integrity monitoring. If anyone detects even a microscopic breach, we evacuate immediately and nuke the site from orbit. Isn't that a bit extreme? Questioned Dra. These creatures exhale death with every breath, Vex replied flatly. Extreme is the bare minimum. The warehouse rapidly transformed into a high-tech observation post with monitoring equipment, scanning everything from atmospheric composition to social media trends. Multiple stealth drones designed to mimic Earthbirds, insects, and in one particularly creative case, a food delivery robot were deployed for close-range observation. First observation, Vex dictated into the mission log. On day 1, the subjects appear completely oblivious to their status as ambulatory biohazards. They voluntarily congregate in enclosed spaces, exchanging deadly respiratory emissions, as if it were some kind of social ritual. Specialist GRE monitored video feeds from various human gathering places. They're not just tolerating proximity, they're seeking it out. Look at this footage from what they call a restaurant. They sit facing each other, actively exhaling across their food, while others inhale the toxic emissions. It must be some form of bonding behavior. Perhaps the toxins affect them differently, suggested Pix, their gelatinous form rippling with scientific curiosity inside their containment unit. Their biochemistry obviously evolved to process these compounds. What's truly fascinating, added Blip, whose communication took the form of controlled electromagnetic pulses, is their language contains numerous references to breath as something positive. They tell those experiencing distress to take a deep breath. They describe things that surprise them as breathless kisses, which appears to involve directly exchanging respiratory emissions at extremely close range. Disgusting, dry hissed reptilian features contorting behind their face plate different, corrected Vex. Remember the Alliance Code of Cynical Ethics, no value judgments on evolutionary adaptations. 3 days into the mission, Technician Z made a puzzling discovery. Commander, these atmospheric readings can't be right. I'm detecting significantly elevated levels of toxic compounds in specific locations, particularly during nighttime hours. Equipment malfunction, Vex inquired. Triple check the readings are accurate. Some locations show compound levels up to 300% higher than baseline human exhalations, well beyond what would be immediately lethal to any Alliance species. Further investigation revealed these hotpots were establishments called bars and clubs where humans deliberately consumed ethanol, a substance that increased the toxicity of their exhalations. They're weaponizing themselves. Vex's compound eyes blink rapidly behind his protective faceplate. Not exactly, Grex replied, analyzing intercepted communications. They call this having a good time. The ethanol is mildly toxic to them as well, but they consume it specifically for its mind-altering effects, so they're poisoning themselves for enjoyment, which makes them more poisonous to others. He struggled to comprehend, and I thought the reproductive customs of the Dinans were baffling. The team dispatched a modified surveillance drone, disguised as an autonomous cleaning unit, into a local establishment called Dave's Dive Bar. During peak operating hours, the atmospheric sensors nearly overloaded. Look at these readings. Z's normally monotone voice vibrated with astonishment. Acetaldehyde levels are off the charts. If one of us took a single breath in there without protection, cellular breakdown would begin almost instantly. And they laughing, observed Grex, monitoring the video feed. They're literally surrounded by lethal concentrations of toxins, and are celebrating their resistance is remarkable. Noted, already compiling a preliminary xenobiology report. The compounds appear to induce temporary alterations in cognitive function, balance, and social inhibitions, all of which the humans find desirable despite clear physical impairment. The investigation took another unexpected turn when the team observed a human medical facility. Some humans wore facial coverings remarkably similar to simplified versions of Alliance breathing apparatus. They know, exclaimed Pix, nearly bouncing in excitement within their containment suit. They must understand they're toxic and are trying to contain their emissions. Security Officer Dry Ever, the pessimist, hissed skeptically. If they knew, they'd all be wearing them. A more thorough data analysis revealed a more mundane truth. They're protecting themselves from pathogens, Pix explained during the evening briefing. Microorganisms that cause disease within their own species. They have absolutely no idea that their normal exhalations could wipe out an entire Alliance delegation, so they're concerned about making each other mildly ill while completely oblivious to the fact that they're walking weapons of mass destruction to any non-terrestrial life form. Communication specialist Blips electromagnetic field fluctuated with what the team recognized as their equivalent of hysterical laughter. Day 7 brought an alarming discovery. The team's monitoring equipment detected specialized atmospheric sensors being installed in a nearby government facility. They've discovered us, Dra immediately concluded, instinctively reaching for their weapon. Unlikely, counted Z after analyzing the data. These senses are calibrated to detect carbon monoxide, radon, and various hydrocarbon pollutants, all substances harmful to humans themselves. They're still completely oblivious to the lethality of their own breath to non-terrestrial life. The investigation expanded to various human environments. The team observed schools where young humans gathered in large numbers in poorly ventilated rooms, hospitals, where the most vulnerable humans were exposed to the concentrated breath of visitors, and public transportation, where humans stood pressed together, essentially exchanging toxic emissions at point-blank range. It's as if they're attempting to kill each other, unobserved, yet somehow failing spectacular. One particularly bizarre human ritual involved gathering in darkened rooms to watch large projected images. While seated in close proximity to strangers, the team infiltrated one such movie theater with a specialized drone recording both the event and the atmospheric composition. They're not just tolerating each other's toxic emissions, they're sharing food during the process, reported. Grex, a substance called popcorn, appears central to this ritual, and in some cases they exchange saliva directly with selected companions directly. Mouth-to-mouth contact, we've observed it in multiple contexts, always with apparently positive social connotations. Commander Vex's official report to Admiral Zix was the epitome of cosmic irony. Subjects remain completely unaware. They are walking biochemical hazards to every known sapient species beyond their world. However, they are quite concerned about making each other mildly ill through respiratory exchange, while simultaneously engaging in numerous behaviors that facilitate said exchange. The contradiction appears to be lost on them entirely. A fascinating secondary discovery came when the team analyzed human fiction they have created. Extensive entertainment narratives about contact with extraterrestrial life. Blip reported after processing several thousand movies and television shows, and prompted Vex. In the majority of scenarios, the humans triumph through some unique biological or intellectual advantage. Frequently, the fictional aliens are vulnerable to Earth's microorganisms or atmosphere. The irony is physically painful, muttered Pick. Meanwhile, at Alliance headquarters, bureaucracy flourished in the fertile soil of crisis. 17 separate committees formed to address the human situation, each producing contradictory recommendations. The DEF committee advocated for a preemptive containment strategy, citing the existence of nearly 8 billion walking biohazards as an unacceptable risk. The Scientific Research Committee argued for continued study of human biochemistry, suggesting potential medical applications for the toxic compounds. The Ethical Considerations Committee produced a 1,200-page document questioning whether the Alliance had the right to restrict a sentient species based on their natural biological functions. One particularly ambitious proposal suggested constructing a massive quarantine barrier around the Sol system, a project engineering reports bluntly described as physically impossible and astronomically moronic. After reviewing Vex's latest findings, Admiral Zix made a career-defining decision: prepare for official first contact. She ordered crystalline form glittering with determination, and find me the best ventilation engineer in the Alliance immediately. The final observation in Commander Vex's Earth report perfectly captured the absurdity of the situation these humans have developed. Space travel, nuclear physics, and thousands of variations of caffeinated beverages, yet remain completely oblivious that every breath they exhale is a lethal cocktail to non-terrestrial life. They spend more energy worrying about their appearance in social media images than the fact they're fundamentally incompatible with galactic society. Perhaps the most dangerous thing about humans isn't their toxic breath. It's their capacity for oblivious confidence in the face of a universe they don't remotely understand. Whether that quality would prove to be humanity's greatest weakness or their greatest strength remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the Alliance would need a lot more air filters. The ventilation engineer in question turned out to be Chaos, a gas phase entity whose species had evolved in the turbulent atmosphere of a gas giant. Chaos didn't have a body in the conventional sense, instead existing as a coherent pattern of ionized particles contained within a specialized mobile unit that resembled a high-tech snow globe with occasional lightning storms. You want me to design a filtration system that can remove 17 different toxic compounds from human exhalations in real time while being compacted enough for practical use and effective enough to prevent the diplomatic corps from dying horribly. During first contact, Higgs particles swirled in what those familiar with the species recognize as amusement. "No pressure then, can you do it?" Admiral Zix asked directly, her crystalline structure vibrating with urgency. "Of course I can. The question isn't capability, it's timeline. The Alliance Council wants this yesterday as usual, sooner if possible, and with absolute reliability. So you're asking for a miracle, not engineering. We're asking for both chaos. The fate of interspecies relations might depend on it." Kisses particles formed a complex pattern that roughly translated to a resigned sigh. "Fine, but I'll need resources, lots of them." What followed was a masterclass in both engineering innovation and creative interpretation of Alliance requisition protocols. K's commandeered 3 research labs, 12 specialist engineers from across the Alliance, and what one logistics officer described as enough rare materials to build a small moon. Official records would later list the project under miscellaneous maintenance expenditures to avoid bureaucratic entanglement. Status report. Admiral Zix demanded on day 12 of what was unofficially dubbed Project Don't Die. "From talking to humans, we've made progress," Kix replied, particles zipping around frantically. Inside their containment globe, the initial prototypes were suboptimal. Defined suboptimal, the test subject expired within 4.3 seconds of exposure. That's significantly suboptimal, yes. Well, science is an iterative process. The first breakthrough came when the team abandoned conventional filtration technology. Entirely conventional filters, it turned out, couldn't process the complex organic compounds in human breath quickly enough to prevent lethal exposure. The solution emerged from an unlikely source, a recreational device popular among the methane-breathing inhabitants of Real 4. They used this to create amusing bubble shapes in their methane pools, explained Assistant Engineer Vil, a tentacle being whose multiple appendages manipulated holographic interfaces simultaneously, but I've modified it to create a molecular deconstruction field that breaks down complex organics into harmless base elements. Testing proceeded with escalating levels of human breath concentration using samples collected by the Earth Observation Team Alliance. Volunteers from various species subjected themselves to controlled exposure tests monitored by medical staff ready for immediate intervention. The XQ-7 prototype just survived exposure to what we're calling post-coffee morning breath, announced Hugh on day 29. Particles arranged in their species equivalent of a triumphant grin. If it can handle it, it can handle anything. The solution, when it finally emerged after 17 sleepless cycles, was elegantly simple yet technologically revolutionary: the human interaction atmospheric stabilizer, or high, pronounced like highs in standard Alliance speech. It works in all. Kicks explained to the assembled Alliance leadership, particles zipping around enthusiastically within their containment globe. The outer field creates a nanoscale filtration barrier that allows oxygen molecules to pass while capturing the toxic compounds. The secondary system neutralizes these compounds through a catalytic process I developed based on the respiratory mechanisms of the Valyrian crystal bats. The tertiary system provides an emergency backup cap capable of sustaining full protection for up to 23 minutes in case of primary and secondary system failure, allowing ample time for evacuation procedures. And its fashionable questioned cultural affairs. Director Bloop, a Siop pod-like being whose species placed high value on aesthetic presentation, as fashionable as life-saving respiratory equipment, can be. Kex replied, particles forming the equivalent of an eye roll. We've designed versions that mimic jewelry accessories or can be integrated into existing environmental suits. Testing confirms 99.997% efficiency in neutralizing all known toxic compounds in human exhalations, added Chief Safety Officer DRM, a silicon-based entity whose natural form resembled a walking crystal formation. The remaining 3% consists of compounds present in such minute quantities that they pose no health risk even with prolonged exposure. With the technical solution in hand, Admiral Zix presented her full plan to the Alliance Council. Official first contact with humanity, conducted in a controlled environment, with appropriate safety measures and a graduated introduction to the galactic community. Let me clarify, High Counselor Grun. Fungal colonies pulsed skeptically. You propose that we not only interact with these toxic breathing humans, but eventually invite them into the Alliance. That is correct, Counselor. The same humans whose normal respiratory function could kill us all the same, and your justification is Admiral Zix's crystalline form resonated with perfect clarity because isolation is not our way, because diversity has always been the Alliance's strength, and because, quite frankly, any species that developed space travel while being completely unaware they're toxic to the rest of the galaxy has a unique perspective we might find valuable. There was a long moment of silence, or the closest approximation, in a chamber filled with 17 species who communicated through everything from sound waves to pheromone releases to quantum fluctuations. Besides, added Science Director Fee, a luminescent entity whose thoughts appeared as glowing patterns across their amorphous surface. Preliminary analysis suggests humans may be resistant to the void plague that has decimated 3 of our outer colonies. Their unusual biochemistry might be the key to developing a cure, and what of the potential threat they pose demanded. Security Counselor Zrax, a hive mind entity representing billions of microscopic organisms that collectively formed a roughly humanoid shape. If their breath can kill us, what other biological hazards might they harbor? That's precisely why controlled first contact is essential. Admiral Zix counted. Better to engage on our terms than wait until they develop interstellar travel independently and show up unannounced on an Alliance world. The debate raged for 7 standard cycles, with position papers, risk assessments, and ethical analyses being produced at a rate that threatened to overwhelm the Alliance's data storage capacity. In the end, the vote was narrowly in favor of Admiral Z's proposal, with the caveat that all personnel involved in human contact would undergo extensive safety training and psychological preparation, and just like that, the humans transformed in the collective consciousness of the Alliance from potential threat to potential partner. Such is the nature of interstellar politics. Official first contact occurred 3 standard months later on Earth's moon-neutral territory. With natural vacuum protection against respiratory hazards, the human delegation, understandably shocked to discover they weren't alone in the universe, was even more shocked to learn their breathing was lethal to their new galactic neighbors. "We've been killing people just by existing," exclaimed the lead human diplomat, a look of horror spreading across their features. That's I don't even know what that is. An interesting biochemical incompatibility, offered the Alliance representatives, speaking through a translator, while safely enclosed in an environmental suit enhanced with Kex's filtration technology. Nothing to feel guilty about. Evolution takes many paths. The human looked unconvinced. "So every time I exhale, I'm basically releasing poison from our perspective." "Yes, from yours. It's perfectly normal respiration. The universe is full of such paradoxes." What followed was perhaps the most unique diplomatic accommodation in galactic history. Alliance engineers installed advanced atmospheric filtration systems in designated mixed species zones. Humans were provided with special devices that captured and neutralized their exhalations when visiting Alliance worlds. Cultural exchange programs included extensive sections on respiratory etiquette. The humans, to their credit, embraced these adaptations with remarkable enthusiasm. They even developed a self-deprecating form of humor around the situation, with T-shirts bearing slogans like "My breath is literally toxic" becoming popular among human diplomats. One particularly enterprising human entrepreneur created a line of scented masks called alien-friendly exhalations, which captured human breath and released synthetically produced aromas pleasant to various Alliance species. Research into human biochemistry led to breakthroughs in medical treatments for several Alliance species. The human tendency to exhale compounds toxic to other life forms turned out to be exceptionally effective against certain pathogens that had plagued the Alliance for centuries. A derivative of acetaldehyde became the key component in a cure for the Relian wasting disease, saving millions of lives. As for xenobiologist Threx, whose accidental discovery had started the whole affair, the once shunned researcher received the Alliance's highest scientific honor in a ceremony attended by representatives of all member species, including the newly admitted humans, all carefully using Their breath Nubiz devices Thrill delivered an acceptance speech that would be quoted in xenobiology textbooks. For generation in science, the most dangerous words are "that can't be right." Sometimes when the universe presents us with something that shouldn't be possible, the correct response isn't to reject it, but to reconsider what we thought was possible in the first place. In the years that followed, the initial panic over death-breathing humans became a footnote in a science history file, alongside other first-contact misconceptions, like the Great Handshake misunderstanding of the proximate delegation. Turns out grabbing appendages is not universally friendly, and the diplomatic crisis of the smiling humans bearing teeth is a threat display in at least 7 Alliance species. The universe, it seemed, had played its cosmic joke, and in typical fashion the punchline turned out to be that the very thing that made humans dangerous also made them uniquely valuable. Sometimes, in the vast complexity of interstellar relations, one species' toxin is another species' treasure, or as Admiral Zakes put it in her final report on the matter, the Alliance has always prided itself on accepting differences among its members. We just never expected we'd need specialized air filters to do it.